Today, what I'm going to be talking about is, you might say, the fruition. I have been talking about the wheel of life and the six realms of samsara and the 12 links of interdependence and so forth. And I've been following the book by the Dalai Lama, The Meaning of Life. And now I'm going to go to um, teachings by Trangu Rinpoche. It's on the five Buddha families and the eight consciousnesses. The essential nature of an enlightened being is that they embrace, you could say, the qualities of the five Buddha families. And these qualities pervade every living being, including ourselves, but we do not recognize these. And so they manifest in a confused way, even though they are our essential nature and we are not separated from them. And so frequently it's talked about the wisdoms, the five afflictive states of mind, the five kleshas or the five poisons, being transformed into the five wisdoms, and then the five Buddhas and the five Buddha families. So there's actually a mandala. And again, this is not part of the painting. The painting up at the top does lead to a Buddha realm, but it does not actually show the Buddha realm. So we're going to kind of go beyond the painting at this point. So what you have is a mandala with the four directions and a center. And you have each Buddha assigned to a particular direction and having a particular color and a particular mudra and particular throne, a female consort, and so on down the line. And so I have a chart here that I'm going to bring up. We have here Vairocana, Akshobhya, Ratna Sambhava, Amitabha, Amoga City. These are the five heads of the five Buddha families. Frequently, they're called Dhyani Buddhas. And so each one represents a klesha. So over here, we have the delusion or the klesha. With Vairocana, it's ignorance, delusion. Akshobhya is anger and hatred. Ratna Sambhava is pride and miserliness. Amitabha is desire and attachment. And Amoga City is a jealousy. And it's not that they have these, but the diluted version of the wisdoms that they represent take this form. Here is the wisdom that ignorance is transformed into all-encompassing Dharmadhatu wisdom. You can see over here. And then it is Akshobhya, that anger and hatred is transformed into mirror-like wisdom. And then pride and miserliness develops into, when purified, the wisdom of equanimity. And desire and attachment turns into discriminating wisdom. With desire, you see things and you become attached to what you find desirable. And so when it turns into wisdom, you still are seeing the differences, but you're not attached. So it has this discrimination quality. And then jealousy transforms into all-accomplishing wisdom. They have different mudras in the five Buddha families. Vairocana, his mudra is turning the Dharma wheel. And so he has a mudra like this. Akshobhya has the earth-touching mudra. And so his hand is going to be like this on his knee, touching the throne that he is on. Ratna Sambhava, he represents giving, generosity, and bestowing. And so his mudra will be on his knee, and it's the palm facing you. And this is the same mudra that White Tara has. Amitabha's mudra is this one of equanimity, like this, holding a begging bowl, like this. And then Amoghasiddhi, his mudra is like this, his right hand. When the right hand is in one of these mudras, the left hand is in the lap of the Buddha, and it's facing up. Every of these mudras, except for Vairocana, the left hand is in the lap facing up. Now, they are related in terms of a color. And in terms of the mandala, Vairocana is in the center of it, and he is white. Akshobhya is in the east, which would be facing you if you are visualizing this mandala, and he is blue. Ratna Sambhava is yellow and would be to your left or the south. Amitabha is west, which would be directly across from Akshobhya in the west. And then in the north, which would be on the right, you have Amoghasiddhi, and he is green in color. So you have this mandala with these five Buddhas located this way in the mandala. And they each have a seed syllable. So let me go back to screen sharing here. So over here, right underneath the five and the five Buddha families, we have seed syllable. Vairocana is Om. This is what's going to be found in their heart centers, by the way. Hung for Akshobhya, Tram for Ratna Sambhava, Hri for Amitabha, and A for Amoghasiddhi. In some of our practices, our chanted deity practices, we will summon these five Buddha families, and we will actually go Om, Hung, Tram, Hri, A. I believe in the Amitabha practice that we do here once a month, there is a section where we say these, and the medicine Buddha also, these five seed syllables of the five Buddhas. And with the medicine Buddha, we actually imagine these five Buddhas sitting above us on a crown with Vairocana in the center, Amogha Akshobhya in front, Ratna Sambhava here, Amitabha back here, and Amoghasiddhi over here. And so these it's much more than just trying to understand these in terms of a conceptual way, that they are used in our practices. And they have consorts, female Buddhas, White Tara, Lochana, Mamaki, Pandara, and Green Tara. So they are equal in terms of their realization, in terms of this mandala. And in some of the deity practices, almost all of the deity practices, we visualize ourselves as the deity, and then we invite the actual deities from their pure lands to come reside in the sky in front of us, and then eventually they join us and become inseparable from us. Then what happens, again, this is in White Tara and some other practices, then we invite these 5 Dhyana Buddhas to come, and they come, and then they come with their consort. The consorts hold vases with Amrita in them, and then they pour water from their vases into us in the form of the deity to purify us. And so in some of these practices, this is incorporated. And so you have the 5 Dhyana Buddhas, you have their consorts, and you have them purifying you. So this is, it's something that is more than just good to know, that these are used in some of our practices that we do. So going back here to the name of these different Buddhas, is Vairocana is he who is radiant like the sun. Akshobhya is immovable or unshakable. And that is that through his resolve to never get angry, he has that immovable, unshakable quality. Ratna Sambhava is born of the jewel, or the one born of the jewel. Ratna is jewel in Sanskrit, and Sambhava is born, or also source of preciousness. Amitabha is the Buddha of infinite light, and Amoga Siddhi is the one who accomplishes what is meaningful. And so their colors are associated with elements as well. Vairocana is associated with the space element, and Akshobhya is associated with water, Ratna Sambhava, earth, Amitabha, fire, and Amoga Siddhi, air. I'm going to go now back to my talk. First, I'm going to talk about Akshobhya. And as I said, he represents the wisdom, which is the purification of anger. And that anger seems to be the most powerful of all the afflictive emotions, the afflictive states of mind. That anger can arise towards someone else. It can actually arise towards an object, and it can arise towards ourselves. We can be angry with ourselves. And if you look at anger, it creates a lot of pain. And not only for us, but for those around us. That if you are living in a household and one member is angry, it really has a significant effect on everybody else. They know the other person is angry. They are more careful of what they say, or even who they're going to be with. You might easily retreat to a room where that person isn't, so you can avoid their anger. So it creates immediate pain, and it creates harm in the future when you are angry. And it, of course, develops a stronger habit of being angry. So we have to understand anger, and we have to understand why it is negative and understand how we can work with it. And of course, you might say the worst outcome from being angry is that at the time of death, you could be reborn in a hell realm where you experience incredible suffering and pain for an incredibly long period of time. So we have to be careful about that. However, as we purify the anger and remove it, it gradually transforms into mirror-like wisdom, where there's no distinction between self and other. And that what we, you might say, experience, what we see, is completely accurate with no distortion. So the realization of wisdom, mirror-like wisdom, is the realization of the Buddha Akshobhya. And he is the Lord of the Vajra family. Each of these Buddhas are the head of a particular Buddha family. And his consort is Mama Ki, and it means she who can extinguish hatred. His main bodhisattva is Vajrapani. And Vajrapani, as the name suggests, which is Vajra, he is not only powerful, but he has you might say, a semi-wrathful aspect. Or maybe a better way to put it is that Vajrapani does not put up with confusion. So let me see here. Let's see, there are deities in his mandala, just to mention some of these Vajrayana deities, are Chakrasambhara, He Vajra, Vajrakilaya, and Kalachakra, for instance. So the next Buddha is Ratna Sambhava, and he is realized when the disturbing emotion of pride is purified. So when we feel that we are better than others who are in a less fortunate situation, when we feel that we are superior to others just because we feel that way about ourselves, even if they are not in an inferior position, we can easily feel that we are superior to people that are in a higher position to us. For instance, a lama. Or when we feel that we are just plain spiritually or mentally better than others, that we are smarter, stronger, yada, yada, yada. There's so many things that we can embark on in terms of thinking that we are better than other people. So of course, the basis of this is thinking that you are separate from other people rather than seeing that we are equal. So we need to recognize this klesha in our mind stream. We must give up our ego clinging. And we must realize that a purified mind does not distinguish between pure and impure, good and bad, I and others. It experiences all things equally. So when pride is eliminated, then the wisdom of equality arises. And you become Ratna Sambhava, Buddha Ratna Sambhava. His activity is enrichment. This is his karma. That's why he is yellow in color. So he enriches living beings. As I said, Ratna Sambhava means jewel born. His consort is she who extinguishes pride. And his main bodhisattva is, this is difficult to pronounce correctly. Maybe I should spell it. Kshitigarbha. Chitigarbha is hopefully a close pronunciation, correct pronunciation to that name. So that is his main bodhisattva. And some of these are in the Tashi prayer, by the way, both the Buddhas and these bodhisattvas. Not all of them, but some of them are. Now, the third one we're familiar with, and that is Amitabha. And so his wisdom represents the purification and elimination of attachment and desire. And this desire causes suffering by keeping our mind busy and restless, thinking about what we would like, why we would like it, how we're going to acquire what we want, and so forth. And when you are attached to things, you're never satisfied, that you're always craving more or better things. So desire is a huge problem. And then, of course, we'll go through all kinds of things to acquire what we desire, to earn the money so that we can acquire it, and so on and so forth. When it is eliminated, it transforms into discriminating wisdom, as I had mentioned. So you're still seeing the differences between objects, but you're not attached to what you are experiencing. And in fact, you are not seeing things as separate from you. So with this wisdom, you understand and empathize with each and every sentient being. And you appreciate the qualities of others, as well as understanding their inherent primordial goodness. The activity of Amitabha is magnetizing. And what this means is attracting people. So it's not that you are trying to magnetize what you want and bring it closer to you, but that you are actually magnetizing beings so that they eliminate those that are, you might say, receptive, have less desire. So there is, you might say, energy or force in a state of desire. When it turns into discriminating awareness, you have developed clarity. And this is where the name boundless light comes from. So there is boundless clarity that is completely free from confusion. And Amitabha is in the Padma family, the lotus family. His consort is Pandara, and that translates into English as she who can extinguish desire. And his main bodhisattva we're all familiar with is Avalokiteshvara or Chenrezi. Other deities in his mandala are certain forms of Tara, like white Tara, green Tara, Hayagriva, and Kurukula. Next is Amoga City. And he has realized the absence of jealousy. And this is including being jealous of other people's wealth, of their success, of their good fortune, anything, their youth, their partner. I will say this, I have joked with my neighbor who is a good Christian, who has a herd of donkeys. And I have told him with a smile and a big grin on my face that I must be a good Christian, because one of the commandments says you shall not covet thy neighbor's ass. And I have never coveted or been jealous of my neighbor because of his donkeys. And so getting back to the teaching here, it is, we can become jealous of anything. And Amoga City is the Buddha that overcomes jealousy. And the wisdom that develops with the overcoming and elimination of jealousy is all accomplishing wisdom. So jealousy prevents and impedes an individual from accomplishing their own well-being and results in more suffering and further jealousy. So this is why it's called all-accomplishing wisdom. That with the removal of jealousy, all our wishes are naturally and effortlessly accomplished. And of course, what our main wish is, of course, to be happy. And you cannot be happy when you're jealous. So with the removal of jealousy, then it leads to this all-accomplishing wisdom and contentment and happiness. Amoga City's activity is wrathful in that it is removes obstacles and hindrances that prevent spiritual success and maturation. And it's important to understand the word wrathful. I have heard it translated sometimes as being forceful, and I actually prefer that to wrathful. But the idea here is that this kind of energy sees a problem, an obstacle, and so forth, and it focuses on that problem and the removal of it, and that's it. There's no carryover. Well, here's an example that happened to me when I was prison chaplain. The room right next to my office, and I had big windows looking over at that room because you needed to supervise inmates, of course, was called the multi-purpose room. And there were two groups of inmates in there, and they were arguing. And so that got my attention, and I went out there, and I knew some of the people in the one group. And so I asked one of the inmates that I knew, what's going on here? And he started to tell me. And then a man from the other group, who I did not know, and I wasn't facing him, he was behind my back, he started talking. And what they were doing, by the way, is they were arguing over who was going to use the room to practice music. That both of them had you might say, a band, a group of inmates that play music together. The one that I knew would play music for the Protestant chapel service. And so as soon as I asked the one inmate what was going on here, the other one would, behind my back, start talking loudly and quickly, trying to defend his position. And so I turned to him and I said, "Shut up." And then went back to the inmate and said, "Now tell me what's going on here." And the man behind me immediately started talking loud, and I turned around and I said, "Shut up louder." And I went back to the inmate and said, "What's going on here?" And he started talking, and the man behind me started talking immediately. And finally, I just turned around to the man, and at the top of my lungs, I said, "Shut up." And what happened was, suddenly the room got quiet. And the man that I was talking to said, "Oh, that's okay. We'll come back later." And at that point, the disagreement was over with, problem solved, and I went back to my room. Now, personally, I think it would have been fairer to have the group that I was familiar with, that I knew practiced in that room, there practicing, rather than the group that I'd never seen before. But the immediate problem was solved, is the one group left. There was no argument anymore. And so I let go of that. This is what would be called wrathful or forceful behavior. And I didn't hold any animosity towards the man and the group that kept talking and interrupting me. Now, what I did hear through the grapevine was that my standing in the eyes of the inmates in general had actually gone up, that they had seen me now as, well, I might be this kind Buddhist monk, but I do have limits, and I can set them in a way that was clear to everybody. And so this is what this forceful karma is talking about. So wrathful is, it's powerful, it's forceful, but it's very, very directed, laser-like directed to what the problem is, and not close to what the problem is. And I've seen Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche use this kind of behavior too in the years that I have known him. Well, ordinarily, he's a very gentle, kind, peaceful, compassionate person. I've also seen him just cut through everything and go right to the point forcefully, and then leave the room or whatever. So the fifth one, who is in the center of the mandala, as I mentioned earlier, is Vairochana. And when the negative emotion of ignorance is overcome, his wisdom manifests. And so ignorance can have many different aspects in this use of the word. It can be failing to recognize what is beneficial and versus what is unhelpful, what is wholesome versus what is unwholesome, what is virtuous versus unvirtuous. Failing to recognize the difference between the ultimate and the conventional truth is another form of ignorance here. And ignorance is the root of all negative emotions, and that's why he is in the center of the mandala. It is only because of ignorance, taking that which is not a self to be a self, and that which is not other to be an other, that we can develop pride, desire, jealousy, and so forth. So he represents the purification and elimination of ignorance. And this wisdom is the wisdom of Dharmata, the way things are ultimately. The realization, he is white in color, as I said. And it's interesting, I've heard Lama Yeshe, the translator, talk about this color in Tibetan Buddhism when we're doing visualizations, that the white color is sometimes, and frequently, in fact, has the aspect of clarity to it, rather than an opaque white. It's more of a clear, maybe translucent white, where the other colors are not transparent. This color of white is has this clarity aspect to it. His consort is Lochana, and that means she who can extinguish ignorance. And Samantabhadra is his main bodhisattva. In the Nyingma tradition, Samantabhadra is a Buddha. So here is a difference, but in this case, the Kagyus feel that Samantabhadra is a bodhisattva in the Buddha family of Vairochana. Now, I will say this, that these bodhisattvas in these 5 Buddha families, they all are completely enlightened beings that are just manifesting as bodhisattvas. And Vairochana represents the aggregate of form. I have been talking about the 5 skandhas. Maybe I should go back and refer to these other Buddha families too. So to go into the 5 skandhas, Vairocana represents form, Akshobhya consciousness, Ratna Sambhava feeling, sensation, Amitabha perception. Amoga Siddhi is the samskaras, our actions of mind, and so forth. So the order that they are given in when talking about them, like in the 12 links of interdependence, is first there is form, then there is feeling, because we have our 5 senses, and the 6th one, including the mental consciousness. Then we have perception. And then on the basis of the perception of the sensations, we have impulses, mental events, and so forth. And then finally, there is consciousness, where these enter our consciousness as opposed to our subconscious mind, that we become aware of them. And then we have all kinds of concepts and thoughts about these things. So that's how this fits with the aggregates. So form is our body and our sensory receptors, plus our mental consciousness. Then comes sensation or feelings that we get through our body. Then there is the perception of these sensations. Then there are the mental events. Samskara is a Sanskrit word that is used frequently for this aggregate. And then from these mental events, we develop consciousness and become aware of this process. And these aggregates are used to explain how we develop a self and this idea of who we are.